Yeah, we kind of got into music a little late in the game, so we all kind of had our degrees and stuff, and we're working Joe jobs and stuff still, you know.
What constitutes late in the game?
Well, I moved to Toronto after I finished university, and then after a couple of years, then ended up meeting Paul and Amy. So we were in our 20s, late 20s, not like these young upstart kids in their like early 20s.
Yeah, it is funny how what constitutes late in the game for music, right?
Yeah, totally. That being said, I don't think we would be making the kind of music that we're, making if I was trying to do it in my early 20s. So I feel like sometimes these, things need to gestate in your brain, and you come to things a little bit later in life.
That's interesting. I mean, do you feel like there would have been kind of maybe this is too strong a term, but like an arrested development as far as like you start at a certain point and you kind of get like maybe stuck in that for a while?
Yeah, I guess to a certain degree, like maybe, I don't know, maybe we would have maybe created a bit more of our musical template might have been a little bit more standard if we had been like, we need a bass player and we need all of these things, and as opposed to, let's just make what sounds good right now and damn what everyone else is kind of telling us to do. Because there was a time where everyone's like, you know what, you need a bass player, and we tried to have a bass player, but we just sounded like everybody else for a bit, and then we realized what we needed was a low end tone, and then Amy just learned to, play the bass pedals to give us that power. So it kind of kept us as a simple lean 3-piece without. I guess it gave us a chance to sort of like come up with creative solutions other than just doing the basic thing. I guess that's kind of a long-winded way of what I'm trying to say.
You feel like sonically or aesthetically that configuration was and remains a really important part of the band's DNA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I think kind of coming up with creative ways to, do justice to the music that we were making. All of our music kind of starts by and large kind of as a folky sort of, acoustic-y driven sort of song, like for the most part, not all of them, because sometimes we kind of jump in and, we're sort of like off to the races, but a lot of times it needs to have a heart, and then we kind of rip it apart. And I think the three of us with three very diverse kind of musical interpretations of where things can go can take it in places where we weren't expecting. And, sometimes it's that sort of like that when we're restricting ourselves with kind of the palette that we have, it allows us to try different things and sound a little less standard, I guess, with what we would have been doing.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask you this now that you kind of, I guess, have sort of been through the wilderness in this respect, but when the makeup of a band is so tied to not just there being three people, but it being those three particular people, how does it change when somebody leaves?
It's something that I was talking with a good friend of mine recently, and I don't think I really realized how much it would kind of change the impact of the band. We've been together for I think it's like 20 years now or something. And it was early on, a couple years into it. So a little bit of backstory. I'm originally from Alberta. All my family is out there. I've got a younger sister, younger brother. So I guess after like a couple years of doing the band stuff, I was home for Christmas, hanging out with my sister, and she was just kind of like asking, how, like, what's the dynamic with Paul and Amy? How does it kind of work? And I started to describe like kind of the relationship that I have with both Amy and Paul. And as I was going through trying to like break it down I kind of realized that Amy in a way was sort of falling into the same sort of relationship I have with my sister, and Paul in a sense with my brother. And it's sort of like one of those things where I didn't realize until I was talking with her. And in the same sense that, Amy stepped away for a bit, I think I don't know if I realized how important the relationship that I had with my brother and sister was until I say moved away from university. And I was like, yeah, you know what? We're close, but whatever. And it was when Amy kind of like decided to step away and we, had to move forward, that I realized that when she came back, how much something special happens when the three of us kind of get together, and this is fun. It's just it's I like joking around with the two of them and making music, because making music can be a frustrating endeavor at the best of times. But yeah, it's something that I don't know if I would have appreciated, 10 years ago. But then when she came back, it kind of hit home how important that is. That something happens when the three of us get together.
Maybe this is too abstract a question, or maybe it might even be difficult to qualify. But when you say like specifically that your relationship with her is like your relationship with your sister, and your relationship with him is like your relationship with your brother, like what does that mean? What form do those particular relationships take, and how are they similar?
Well, I think that like everyone has a different, like they interact with people in different ways, and I think I guess it's hard to tangibly kind of put away.
That's exactly why there was a really long preamble to it. I thought it might be difficult
and sort of like there's just something about the way that I can interact with Amy and relate with her. And in some ways, it reminds me of my sister. And in the same way that, I can interact with Paul, and it kind of reminds me of the relationship I had growing up with my brother. And at the same time, they have their own dynamic together, which is very unique and personal. And, I can't relate to that in some way. So it's like this weird sort of triangle. And I think it also helps that, Amy's younger than me. Paul is the youngest. Same thing with my sister and my brother. So I think there's this sort of kind of a balance in a way, a symmetry with it.
There's a subconscious thing probably that clicks in too. Just like I wonder, like to a certain extent, how much of I have an older sister. I'm sure that has shaped, generally my relationships with people, but like certainly my relationships with women, like, platonic and otherwise, as I've gone through life, right? I mean, because it's like this like early formative relationship that you have with people. So maybe you just, especially like, I assume that in a situation where, it's the three of you and you're on tour and you're probably like, sharing a lot of vans and, if you're lucky, hotel rooms, that like, it really is obviously a really tight relationship, very sometimes fraught relationship, but you do kind of like, it does, you do sort of like kind of snap into these sort of like sibling-esque relationships.
And I think, there's nothing more kind of, I don't know, if you're writing music with someone, you have to just let your guard down and just be emotionally vulnerable, and to reveal yourself to the other people that you're like kind of creating music with. At least that's my perspective, given the music that we kind of create, because I, inherently it's kind of emotional. And I feel like I have a similar sort of, like my brother and sister and I go back decades now, and, we have so much history, and they know everything about me, and you have to be like, be able to open up to them, and they understand you in ways that are intangible. And I think in the same way, that's sort of like, being in a band for this amount of time, you have to inherently kind of like open yourself up and be available for that sort of thing. And I think it's also double the fact that when I moved away, my family all kind of, they were still out west. And, they all are still out west, but I had no family that was kind of here, and kind of Paul and Amy were that support system that, was around me, that was very similar to, my siblings. So
I moved from San Francisco to New York, so like I can relate very much. Leaving the entire family out west. It's
Do you have any family out there now, or
yeah. My family is still same suburb outside of San Francisco. I'm
Okay.
still out there. Fortunately, I have a job that gets me out there like a few times a year. But it's funny to hear you describe your relationship with songwriting, because it does reflect, having gone back and read and listened to some of other interviews that you've done around earlier albums. You do have a very complicated relationship. You use the word frustration to describe it here, but it just sounds like it's always been like a difficult. Obviously, you're right now you're talking about this vulnerability, but that there have been times when you are, I don't know if it's like imposter syndrome, but maybe just worrying about yourself and your own abilities as a songwriter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think there's definitely a certain amount of that imposter syndrome that's kind of like always bubbling under the surface there. Yeah. I think when we kind of were starting out, there was no sort of like, there wasn't that voice in the back of my head sort of telling you, what you could or couldn't do, or I wasn't struggling to block out what other people were thinking of, what the end result could be. I remember a really good friend of Paul's, this guy named Jason, who played in another band that Paul was in. I remember we were playing a show. It was early on, and like things were starting to go well. And he was like, "I love when bands start out because they don't know what they can't do, and just like everything's new." So I think when we're starting out, it was like everything was exciting in terms of, oh, I've got this start of something, and like let's just run with it, and who knows, it might just be under a 2-minute song, and let's just explore this, and like, all right, that song's done. And it just was exciting and fun. And then as we got on further down the line, it's sort of like, oh, well, no, a song needs to be like this amount of time. And we got to I don't know if we're coming back to the chorus. You know what? I really miss those days when it was just sort of like, you know what? Let's just do it. This feels good. Move on. And let's just explore and have fun. And that, I've struggled with that for a number of records now, where it's sort of like, okay, like we're like trying to create the music and trying to block out what people are thinking. So yeah, that's always definitely been something I've kind of like struggled with. That being said, one of my really good high school friends, I was kind of working on these last 2 songs that we put out. And he's like, him and I started our first band together in high school, and kind of the original reason of coming to Toronto, we were like, oh, let's get the band back together, and it never happened. But he was like, you guys suck, I'm going to start my own band. And turns out that he ended up meeting Paul and Amy and starting a project with them, and then I met Paul and Amy, and then we started a thing, and then
he's like the bizarro version of you.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but anyway, he's been like a really great sounding board. And anytime I'm working on something, like send it to him, get his thoughts. So I was sending some stuff I was working on last summer, and he was like, yeah, it's good. You know what, I'm doing a thing with a friend of mine who's another musician in town, where we're kind of like trying to challenge each other to write a new song a week. He's like, I think you would really, really hate it, which is why I think you should really do it.
Yeah, what do they call it? They call it aversion therapy.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what, you know me well, and I think you're probably right. So yeah, I ended up doing that for a couple of it was like a couple months until we had some shows in Germany, and it was in a way kind of freeing to just like set myself a deadline and be like, you know what, I don't care if nothing happens with this or something. It's just sort of like, I'm just going to get it done. I'm not going to care what somebody thinks about it. And it's just sort of, causing the juices to flow. And it kind of felt like when we were starting out, no way, because I was coming up with weird songs that they very well may end up coming up in the stuff that we're working on in the next couple of months. But it was kind of fun to be like, oh, you know what, I can do this, and I need to like the imposter needs to be, you know, tamped down, and just let the fun part happen, you know.
You're alluding to, and it sounds like there was a period where it was the three of you, and you were maybe writing songs, and you were freer, or did feel freer in a way that you don't know.
Yeah, I think like the first record and you know, parts of the second one, it was definitely sort of like, because we're just starting out, we're kind of focusing, being like, we were focused on, we need to have enough songs to, you know, play a show. And it kind of started from there. And it's sort of like, you didn't really think about, you know, what the end result is going to be of terms of, you know, if X number of people like it or something. But after things kind of like get moving, it's kind of hard to like block that out and be like, well, you know what, when no one's writing about it and you're just sort of like doing it for yourself, it's great. And then when other people start writing about it and then interjecting their own criticisms of what it could or couldn't be, it's hard to block that out, you know. And you know, I'd like to think that that's not the case, but it's, you know, it's kind of impossible to like not think about that in a way, or at least not be vulnerable to that. That being said, I try my best to just stay off social media in general. Not.
Yeah, I obviously get that from the standpoint of, you know, obviously like they're like, you know, entire industries based on criticism, and then social media is obviously just a horrible nightmare.
Yeah, it's absolutely gotten worse in the last like 15 years or something.
Yeah, no, the algorithms are. Yeah, I was actually just, I was talking to I was doing an interview with a musician earlier, and I was talking about. I just moved up to the Hudson Valley from New York, and I was like, oh yeah, when I was moving up here, you know, I was like trying to find out some stuff about the, you know, the towns, is a small town, what was going on up here. And so I looked on Facebook, and I was just like, who are these monsters? Who are these horrible people in this town that I live in? And obviously like not a very good way of getting to know the people around you. Yeah, sorry, I totally sidetracked myself, but I had a really good point, and then I lost what I was talking about.
You can get it. You'll get it.
Yeah. I'm getting back to it. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I was gonna say that that it's funny though, because the inverse of that. There's a sense to which it is counterintuitive, in which, you know, your brain is saying, oh, we made this thing, people like it enough to go see it and buy my thing, now I'm going to suddenly doubt my ability to do it.
Yeah, it's like you'd think that it would be more sort of like easier to do, like confidence building, but yeah, I think it's sort of it's hard. The brain is a fickle thing.
It's funny. I was reading. I was reading on the band site, and I think this might actually be in relation to the last record, to the 2023 record. But there's a little thing in there where you're talking about ChatGPT, right? And
yeah,
and the words ChatGPT jumped at me, and I was like, oh no. You know,
yeah.
Fortunately, it wasn't going in the direction that I was worried it was going to go in. But it actually went in an interesting direction, and it's something that I have thought about myself, because there was, you know, I'm a writer. You know, this is kind of more of a side thing, but you know, and so there was a point where I was like, oh, I think that there is enough of my writing online that these horrible machines have crawled it and can probably create some approximation of me. I'm going to ask it to write like me. One, either I'm a much worse writer than I thought I was, or like it hasn't quite cracked me yet. But two, like, what was for you, and this sounds like it was Paul's idea, asking a robot to write song lyrics in your style. What was that experience like?
Well, I to be perfectly honest, I think it was mostly Paul trying to like troll me,
Sure.
It's kind of this idea that, we got to get some songs
I'm
out.
not
And he's like,
suggesting.
"Oh, yeah.
I'm not
Oh, yeah."
suggesting that was going to be the new album. I'm just saying, like, what was it like to sort of see like a machine try to like do your job for you?
It was a little weird. I think another friend had sent me a thing where it's like, look, you can just, here's a bunch of lyrics that sound like allusions that the band does. And I was like, okay, yeah, here's talking about snow and weather. That's a very Canadian thing, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, we have 5 things up here, and those are 2 of them.
But yeah, I know it was Paul sort of, being like, look how easy this is. Here's a song about the CN Tower, and and this is also when ChatGPT was just kind of really, everyone was sort of like, oh, this is like a real thing now. But yeah, I think, I was working on some stuff. I'm like, well, you know what, it's kind of a therapeutic thing, like, why is it, like, I was asking ChatGPT, like, why is it that I'm afraid of writing? Because it was just something I was really, I enjoy, like, I enjoy the end result. I think it's sort of the process that just feels a little futile sometimes. The only way I can kind of describe it to Paul and Amy is like, so I'm an engineer, and I like, puzzles and stuff like that. I like solving things. Yeah. Like, and in a way, writing a song is kind of like solving a problem and whatnot. And when you have a song, it's kind of like putting a puzzle together, but not knowing what the end result's going to look like. But when you're able to get the pieces together, it's like, that's why I do that. That feels good when when something locks together and feels good. So I think I was sort of like, well, maybe like Paul's using ChatGPT to troll me. Maybe I'll find some starts of words here. And at the end of the day, nothing really worked out. It was just sort of like, this is just confusing, and it wasn't anything inspiring. And I think I was starting to ask it about, more the therapeutic problems, like, why is it that I'm afraid of writing? And then it was, I don't know. I feel at some point it was just sort of like, later, I'm out of here. This it couldn't answer any questions that I had, and I was like, okay, I broke it.
Yeah, I was watching something recently about it was actually about the Reagan Thatcher era, and it was talking about this like early version of an attempt to create a I guess what we would call like an AI therapist now, and it was a computer program where people would like put their like problems into it. And the only thing it would do is it would repeat what they said as kind of questions back to them.
Yeah.
And that was enough. That was enough to kind of keep them going.
I think I heard about that on one of the Adam Curtis documentaries.
It was an Adam Curtis documentary.
Yeah. Maybe maybe not hypernormalization, but it's one of those ones.
It was a 2-hour one. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was an hour.
Yeah, and it's like I know the exact scene, and it exactly that, where it was just all it was kind of just repeating like the questions that you're asking. Like, well, how do you feel about that?
Yeah,
and it was just sort of like allowed you to open up, and yes, I definitely. As soon as you started talking about that, I'm like, I've seen the same documentary.
I don't. Obviously, like that's the nature of Adam Curtis, right? Is that like it's on screen for like 2 seconds, and you don't really get like a lot of depth. You don't know how much the people who are using it know about it. But obviously, like one, you're an engineer, but 2, suddenly you're kind of like you're fucking around with ChatGPT, and that it like becomes this like impromptu, somewhat tongue-in-cheek therapy session. But like you do kind of want to see it it's like you want to see like, hey, is this going to do something for me? Like, is it going to actually be helpful?
Yeah, like is there? I think the thing is that the idea of AI is just allowing it to like do all the work for you. But I think it's sort of like, well, if it allows you to sort of, there was I'm just going to like rewind a bit. I forget the guy's name that did a series of documentaries, Everything is a Remix, Kirby Ferguson, maybe, if you've, but I was watching some of his videos, and I think he was talking about AI as like the hardest thing to do is to like start from a blank page. And it's sort of like it's so much easier when you like rewriting is something that is so much easier because and the only thing that the first draft of something has to do is just exist, more or less. And I think I constantly get hung up on the sort of like the blank page sort of thing. I was like, I don't even know where to start here. But I think I just need to get used to more. All right, just start it. If it exists in the world, that is something that has never been done before. Well, I'm over over glorifying it, but it's just sort of like it just has to be birthed, and then it's like you then utilize your internal, taste measures that you have to then usher into being the thing that excites you. And I think, in some ways, AI can be used for that in a way. It's like it's helping to sort of like, well, is this good? No, that's garbage. But there's a kernel of something there, and you could utilize it. I'm all saying this hypothetically because I really haven't used it for that, but I think it has its opportunities for that sort of thing. I have played around with it a bit, being like, well, maybe this could work, and it's like, nope, it's all just feels a bit like garbage. But the idea of utilizing it for those sorts of things, because we're these mushy machines but there's something intangible that we know when we're creating something and focusing on it and what is good and what is bad, so.
I was thinking about this, and now this kind of makes a lot of sense knowing that you're an engineer. So you're an analytical person who also makes creative things. But as you were describing the genesis of one of the songs in the new album, there's the mouse story, right? Now you've told the mouse story multiple times, and it strikes me that. And I know, like, to a certain extent, a lot of this is like, okay, well, we've got a press release coming out, so like we need to like pull one of the more interesting stories. But it strikes me that I think that one of the things that you found really interesting about the mouse story was not the mouse story in it of itself, but the way that sort of shook something loose, or the way that served as a prompt, and the way that got you into writing something or sort of sent you down an unexpected path.
Yeah. I think it's sort of, you've always got to be. It's like, are you familiar with the Tragically Hip?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well,
we got him a little bit. We got him. We don't CanCon, but they were on SNL a few times. R.I.P. Gord. Yeah.
Yeah. No. We had a chance to play with open for them, and Gord was just the great. We were lucky enough. This is just a side story. When we were starting out, we were covering one of Gord's songs off of his first solo record. So we were covering Candy Geese off Coke Machine Glow. And I think when we were going to be playing with them, Paul had this idea. He's like, maybe we can get Gord to come on stage and sing it with us. I'm like, yeah, good luck, buddy. And then, he was talking to people. Our manager was talking to their manager. And Gord was part of the reason why we got the gig, and he was like, yeah, I'd love to. But I want to do, how about I'll come on while you guys are singing my song, and then we'll like go into one of your songs and I can sing it with you. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I can't, but like my high school mind was blown or something. So yeah, it was like amazing. But anyway, I remember hearing him talk on a podcast or something about, and kind of describing that, in a way, writing it's almost like dosing for water. You don't know when it's going to hit, but you just kind of got to be there and able to receive it when it happens and kind of run with it. And I think, so much of like these writing, like just little moments within the lyrics and kind of inspirations for songs, there are all these, a collection of just different memories that kind of all come together to build a larger thing. Like I remember one of the lyrics in that song, the Hunt In Edson, what my boss, he during COVID, he kind of like brought everyone to the back, And I guess over the Christmas break, he kind of got some news where he got a cancer diagnosis, and he kind of let us all know. But he started with, there's nothing quite like, as they say, there's nothing quite like a rope around the neck to clarify the mind. And I'd not been familiar with that term before. It turns out I'd later read it in like some different books. And then it just always stuck with me. And I remember telling some friends about it. They're like, no, I haven't heard that. And so I had to clarify after. I was like, that's not a Hitler line, is it? He's like, no, it's something. I'm like, good, because I'm kind of working into a song and I'd like to know beforehand.
You, my boss, weren't invoking Hitler for the.
Wouldn't put it past him. He's like a lot of shock value sometimes. Yeah.
This is my side, but I've had this conversation before where I've like, hey, maybe don't say at least the trains run on time, because that's a lot more loaded than you think it is.
Yes, yeah. But anyway, like I think it was a combination of that, and then this sort of event of our cat bringing a mouse in, and then me have to take it out, and as I'm sort of like capturing it, like I've never captured a mouse in my hand with a towel, and it's sort of like I was just feeling this little breathing thing and like taking him out to the backyard to let him go away. And it's sort of like, what is his story going on? Like, what did he do after this? Did his life go on for another season or two, or was it short? And it was just like, was he going back to his den and telling his friends, being like, you guys will not believe what happened. I thought I was dead. I was in a cat's jaw. And so all of these things, it's just, they're things that kind of kick around in my brain. And you never know what is going to end up leading to a story, but I feel like it ends up being, I don't know, an intriguing sort of path to take in a way.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to an extent, you have to be open to receiving it. You have to have the rod. You have to have the rod with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I guess is it something that you can not force, but is it something that you can kind of nudge along?
If you asked me that a year or so ago, I'd be like, no, it's just, you gotta wait for it. But after having gone through like kind of a writing exercise last fall, I'm like, no, it can, and it does. It's like a muscle. It just seizes up if you're not using it, and it just gets tired, and you force it, and you're like, oh, this hurts. But just, I think, allowing yourself to just use it, and realize that it's a skill that you have, and if you're lucky enough to do something that people want to hear, you should be doing it as much as possible. And then not everything has to be perfect, but they have to excite you in some way. And I think I realized in the fall, the more that I was doing it, I'm like, oh, you know what, this is fun. It was fun. Like, and I remember like showing Paul and Amy some of the songs I was creating, and they were like, the decisions you're making remind me of when we were first kind of starting out, because it was kind of free and sort of like weird ways that I was taking songs or lyrics or something, that they were like, yeah, let's, like, this is, I think you should, it's a good thing to do and not think about it too much. So
decision is such an interesting word in this context, or direction is an interesting word in this context. Is there anything that you can kind of point to as far as, places where you've returned to kind of like zigging where you would have more recently zagged?
I don't know. I think it was just sort of, in terms of the songs I was like working on in the fall. I think it's just more just allowing the tools that I had to try, and the constraint of being like, okay, well, like, don't overthink this. Just like, I'm trying to get something done in a week. Like, let's just, don't get bogged down and being like, well, you know what? I don't know if this sound is right. It's be like, who cares? Let's just like, let's run with it, and it'll be fine. It's fun. It sounds great right now. And just allowing creativity to roll without overanalyzing it too much. I think as we're sort of kind of getting like ready for doing some more recording and whatnot, I think it's also, I don't know, in a way going back to AI and ChatGPT and all those things. I think for the longest time, not that we've um, been a pro super meticulous band, but I think we always used to get bogged down in sort of like, well, let's make sure everything is like really timed out, and let's make sure we remove as many errors that are things that are bothering us. But I think more so now, as things get into this like mushy middle, and AI is jumping in and creating something that's like amniotic. Is that the right term? Just like this, it's like it's created in
sanitized
a vacuum.
sort
Yeah,
of.
a sanitized. Like I think this is the best time to just try to create things with all the warts and all the strange things, because we're the only ones that can humans are the only ones that can kind of create these sorts of like things that the machines can't master as of yet.
Yeah, this hadn't even occurred to me until right now, but I was the interview that I was doing earlier. I don't know if you're familiar with her at all. Do you know Mira, the singer-songwriter? She was like on K Records.
Yeah.
She did a lot of stuff with like the microphones, but
Phil Ackerman stuff. Yeah.
Phil, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was talking to her earlier, and we were sort of, I guess, reminiscing about her formative years again, like with K Records, which would have been like mid late 90s, and we were talking about early days of Pro Tools, and that was an interesting moment where there was so much backlash and so much reaction to Pro Tools that like so many people at the time were going out of their way to like, what is the worst possible sound I can get on this record? What is the worst cassette? Like, what is the lowest of lo-fi that I could possibly record this to? And I don't know. Is there is there sort of an equivalent in that you feel like might be kicking around these days?
I don't know. I think I've only kind of thought about it in terms of like, how can we be a little just less calculated in terms of what we're trying to do, and just try to just, allow things to be more free, and like try to do more like live off the floor and just things, and let the grooves sort of like the tempos drift in terms of what feels right. Anyone that's seen our shows, we constantly, Paul's always trying to be like, you need to very much slow down because you're always playing excited. We're all three of us are ahead of the beat all the time, and just sort of like, but it's sort of like, it's a dynamic flow that is, it's not the same. If the whole song is like, well, this is all this tempo, it's like, it sounds good from, I'm not saying not to disparage that, but I'm worried that everything is kind of this thing that, AI is creating this sort of rudimentary sort of thing. And like, why not let's try to allow like the song to groove, and just sort of like maybe it has dynamic like pushes and pulls, and it just works. And it's not a grid. And we try to give up, the ability of, to a certain degree, of like, no, all these hits or all these chords have to be made sure they're timed out. No, it's like, I think there's something that we're missing, the wistfully thinking of how songs had these things that were issues with them that only the artist could hear, but that's what made them intriguing to listeners in a way. It sounded like it was made with humans.
Generally, when I was having conversations, in and around in the pandemic and the difficulty that people were having as far as like writing and recording music, it would usually be about, like we can't get, so it's so much better when we're like writing a song or recording a song that we all be there in person, and there's certain cues and things like that. But something, as we're speaking now, something that occurs to me too is something that was lost in a major way is just the, well, one, as you said, kind of exercising that muscle, but two, whatever sort of like dynamism comes with being in a band that is actively and regularly playing live, that probably has a pretty big impact on you as a songwriter.
Yeah, I think like by and large, a lot of our songs, they benefited from, playing them in front of people. Cause I know we've always said this from like day one. Like, I don't think our first record would have been what it was if it wasn't just us learning how to play in front of people and playing like in grubby basements in places where they're close to us, where you can feel it's like, oh yeah, this isn't working. This isn't working what we're doing right now. But then you change something up and it's like, oh, now it's people are responding. Like there's that sort of dynamic feedback that happens when you're playing in front of people that, you remove that away. It's hard to get that feel for a song sometimes. And we've tried our best to, try songs in front of people before we record them. It's just, it does get harder and harder. Especially with pandemic and as you play a little bit less too.
Yeah. So as we said at the top of the conversation, you're in this kind of liminal space right now between work and starting a tour. So what did the next few days of your life look like?
I'm hopping on a flight tomorrow. So that's where we get to San Francisco, and we're playing a couple of shows. And it's kind of like jumping back and forth between places. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to just having time to play and maybe it's also hard to write on the road, but maybe trying to at least with a couple days here and there and not having to go to work and kind of hopefully get some time to sort of like, okay, let's focus on some writing, even if it's just, by myself and trying to do whatever. I think it's funny, like during pandemic, we never really did much demoing ourselves. So it was like you were saying, like when we couldn't jam together during pandemic, it was very hard because so much of our writing process was the three of us banging our heads against the wall and just generating ideas in the space. And then when pandemic happened and like we tried to jam online, but the limits of the physical world did not make that like realistic, even with, us all living in the same neighborhood. It's sort of like, the timing of things. You can't send packets back and forth in real time and make it seem like it was making sense. But I think something that we benefited from was, trying our best to achieve our, at least some sort of vision in our head before we share it, and in terms of like demoing songs on our own. So I think that helped, and I think we've grown from that too.
Yeah, I mean, so as you know, I've been on an Adam Curtis kick lately, and
they're great. I love Adam Curtis stuff.
Yeah,
I haven't seen some of the new stuff because I really enjoy like hearing his voice and him talking, and his music that he picks is so perfect. What is it? Not the trap, Power Nightmares. I think I remember I'd heard the Brian Eno record. Is it Another Green World? It's Green World. Yeah. But it's all through that. And every time I'm like, oh, this song's great. And I pull up Shazam, I'm like, man, Brian Eno again. Yeah. Way to go. Way to go.
and then just like, I like watching it and like a special song pops up or something.
Yeah.
And I say this because I'm filling in gaps that I hadn't, and one of the things that I hadn't seen was his USSR documentary, the Soviet fall of the Soviet Trauma Zone.
Yeah. I haven't watched that one either, and I think it's sort of like
because that's another one where he
doesn't.
There's no talking, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I'm watching it at the gym now, which is a good place to watch it because you have to focus. You
definitely.
Yeah. But I bring this up because listen, man, I don't know if you noticed, but shit's fucked in the world. I don't know if you picked up on that.
I've like I said, I've tried to lay off social media. Is there something going on I should know about?
No. It just really it strikes me because there are you're watching this or again like the sort of like the Reagan thing or something, and it's just like you're watching I'm watching this documentary about the fall of the Soviet Union, and there are certain things, obviously nothing is ever one-to-one, but there are certain things that pop up from time to time, and you're like, oh, that's kind of eerily familiar or close, and it makes me uncomfortable. And one of the things that did that to me recently was seeing a band say, hey, like, we're not as comfortable touring the US as we used to be.
Yeah, that's definitely we had a lot of conversation, and I think like our visas are running out soon, and it's astronomical to get a new one, and I don't know when we're gonna have another chance to get back again. Like we have so many amazing memories of playing shows in the States, and like that's kind of the first traction we kind of got. I remember playing a show in Minneapolis, and we played like the 7th Street entry right before our first record came out. Yeah, exactly. It was amazing, and the amount of people there that knew our stuff and were so engaged and singing the songs back to us, I was like, wait, we're not, no one knows this yet. This isn't supposed to, and it just felt so magical. And yeah, we've met a lot of great people. So yeah, it's uncertain times right now. And we're looking forward to playing in front of people. We felt uncomfortable when pandemic started, and we had our first shows into pandemic, and of course we played 3 shows and got instantly sick. But but it was like the world's changing. I'm trying not to think about how strange it might be, but like I just like playing for people, and it's I don't know what to say. I still gotta get into the States.
No, it's one of those things. And, this gets back to what I was talking about before about like moving and making the mistake of the first thing that I'm looking at being this Facebook group. And then like getting there, like that was my worry. Like I'm looking and I'm like, oh God, like who are these awful people that are in this town that I'm moving to? And then, obviously like you get there and you actually talk to people and you're like, oh yeah, no, people are by and large really nice and good. And I'm sure that like, for all of the sort of like difficulties and troubles and like always fun to completely have your current impressions of a place, like, just seen through like CNN or whatever at the moment. But once you actually get there and are engaging with the people, especially the people who are really engaged with the thing that you do, I mean, you do remember why you're doing it, and you do remember like how many just great and wonderful people there are everywhere.
Yeah, it's funny. It's just turns out it's healthy to meet people and make tangible relationships and touch grass every now and then, because sometimes it can be unhealthy to be stuck in an echo chamber that is not is just reinforcing fears. So yeah, it's it's hard not to get sucked into that to a certain degree. And I'm looking forward to seeing friends that we haven't seen on the road for a while, and playing for people that want to maybe have a little bit of joy, hopefully, for a night.
I like that.
I don't know why I sounded so like dour there. That wasn't my intention.
Cemented in this coffin alone, we'll keep up appearances on your